To begin our wampum belts, we need to first get our cardboard loom. And a loom is the thing that you are going to be weaving on. So first you're going to get a piece of masking tape and write your name and homeroom code on the back of this so that we don't lose your work while we're in progress. Then you're going to have to pick a piece of string color that you are going to be using for the warp. And the warp is going to be the string that stays on your loom that you will weave in and out of with your needle. I've decided to use black yarn for my warp, and I'm going to take an end of it and measure it out from my thumb to my elbow 10 times. So once you measure out thumb to elbow 10 times, you can take your scissors, cut it, and then you're ready to tape it and start weaving onto your loom. To have your yarn pile, you're going to get one more piece of masking tape, and you're going to take one end and tape it on the back right on the side where your name is. So you'll just make sure it's tied down nice and tight with that tape. You want to tape it on the back. And then to create our warp, you're going to be just stringing it through the notches on your loom. So I'm going to tape it on the back, make sure it's secure, and then I'm just going to loop it through the notches on the top and the bottom. You need 6 strings across in order to create your work. So make sure you line it up and it's not diagonal. You want it to go in the top and the bottom. So you'll have 6 strings. We need 5 spaces in between. So 6 strings all the way through. And once that's done, you'll get another piece of tape and tape it on the back. And then you are ready to begin your weaving. So the strings we just looped were called a warp, and now we need to create what's called a weft. And the weft is what's going to create your loom and tie it all together. So the same way we had to pick a color for our warp, I needed to pick a color for my weft, and I went with white for my weft. We are going to be doing the measurement again of thumb to elbow, but this time your weft needs to be 6 long. So measure 6 times from your thumb to your elbow. 6 times, and then you can cut it. We're going to be weaving left to right in the same way that we read and write. So find the end, and then on the top left, on the back of your loom, you're going to tape one end of your string. At this point, you can choose to create a knot in your first string if you would want to, but if not, you can just follow along with me. So you will get your needle, and in the other end of your weft string, we need to tie a knot to secure your needle so it doesn't come out while you're working. To do that, you're going to take your yarn, put it through the head of your needle, and create a loop. Once you create a loop, you will take the end, push it back through, and pull tight. We'll repeat this one time so you'll have a double knot to hold that needle onto your yarn. Once your needle is secure and doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, you're ready to begin collecting your beads. You should have your beads lined up in your bag from your planning sheet. So we're going to start with the first one on the left. And to do that, we will line our beads up and set them on our needle in the same way that the pattern is on our paper. My first pattern is red, then orange, then yellow, then green, then blue. You'll notice I have some X's on my paper. The first time I made this, I didn't record it, so I'm going to make sure I mark off everyone as I go, and you'll see I do that. To get started, I'm going to take my needle with my beads and put them completely under all of my strings. You'll have to use your other hand to lift your strings up, and for the first few, you might have to move your strings around. You want to have one bead in between every string, so you can pick them up and move them around. As this process continues, I promise it'll get easier, but to get started, that needle goes completely under everything, one bead in between every warp string, and then pull your string all the way through. To make it secure, your needle will have to go back through your beads, but on top of the warp this time. You have to make sure that on the way to the right, your needle is underneath all of your strings, and on the way to your left, your needle is on top of all your strings. If it's not, When we go to finish this, your beads will fall off. So you need to make sure you're paying attention to making sure you're under going to the right and over going back to the left. After I complete each pass, I'm going to take my pen and mark off at either the top or the bottom of my row so that I know it's already done and I don't get confused. Once my first row is done, I'll move on to my second one. My second row from bottom to top is orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. We're going left to right and bottom to top for our pattern. Remember that that needle needs to go all the way underneath when I'm going to the right. Then I push down on my warp, pull my needle all the way through. Then to go back to the left, I need to put my needle on top of my warp in my beads, push down, pull it all the way through until it's nice and tight. And then I can mark off row number 2 and move forward to my next row until I am completely finished. As you're working, you want to make sure that your weaving stays nice and tight. So that might mean that you need to push some rows up as you're working so they stay close together going up and down. And you want to make sure that it's staying nice and tight going left to right. When we are finished, you don't want these loose or your beads will fall off and your string will get all loose and floppy, and that won't look nice as a keychain. I promise it will fall apart if you don't have your things nice and tight. Once you're finished and you get to the end of your pattern, we need to make a knot so that your beads don't fall off. To do that, I'm going to take my needle and on the last string, I'm going to make a loop the same way I did to tie my needle on. So I will put my needle underneath, pull it up, and I have a loop. My needle is going to go through my loop, pull tight, and repeat it so it double knots. Once you have a double knot on the end, you can take your string and cut your weft. At this point, you can also cut your needle off and come back and give it to me. We need to create a knot at the top where our bead started if you didn't do that in the beginning. So I'm going to untape mine, and this one was a little trickier since it was still tied down and tighter and didn't have a needle, but the same process of pushing it underneath to create a loop, pulling the end through my loop and double knotting. Then you can trim it very carefully, making sure you don't cut it too short because you don't want all your beads to fall off. If you cut it too short and your knot is not secure, then your beads will fall off. So if you want to wait until the very, very end to trim, that's okay. Now it feels the part like we're going to break it, but we're finishing it off. So we're going to take the tape off of the back. We should have 2 pieces of string for each end of our warp. And to get done, I'm going to take my scissors, directly in the middle of the back and cut those strings so that my weaving is now detached from my loom. I'm just going to create a simple knot in the one end to tie it onto my keychain. So I'm going to take my shorter end, slip it through the keychain, and create a double knot on my keychain so it hangs really nicely. The other end, you can create one single knot, or you could braid it, you can trim it. It's up to you. As long as it is secure, you can knot it, you can braid it. If you trim it, only trim it a little bit because you still need to be able to knot it at the end. You don't want your beads to fall off. But you can finish off the bottom of your keychain however you'd like.